My Pecha Kucha project focuses on the equity issue of students with trauma lacking access to trauma informed resources. Without this essential support, trauma can affect learning, behavior, and emotional well being, which worsens disparities. Trauma informed practices are crucial for equity. According to the American Psychological Association, trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event such as abuse, experiencing or witnessing violence, crime, or neglect. Trauma manifests itself in many ways, including physical, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral responses. When we consider trauma in education, we often think of adverse childhood experiences. Students impacted by trauma are at a much higher risk of academic failure. Chitillo and Pietrantoni note that lack of trauma-informed resources deepens inequalities. Trauma-informed practices, like building relationships and routines, create safe environments that reduce triggers and support student self-efficacy. The ethics lie in ensuring all students, especially those who've experienced trauma, have equitable access to support. The primary dilemma is balancing limited resources with the urgent needs. Kavanaugh in Trauma-Informed Classrooms in Schools stresses the widespread impact of trauma and how inadequate support reinforces systemic inequities. Secondary dilemmas include balancing limited resources, training staff without overburdening them, and integrating emotional support with academic goals. My focus is a dilemma because trauma impacts both learning and behavior, yet schools often lack the resources or frameworks to address it equitably. Failing to address these needs risks perpetuating cycles of harm. Conflicts arise when academic achievement is prioritized over emotional support or when resources must be allocated between competing needs. Cultural differences in addressing trauma add further complexity. Balancing individual needs with systemic equity creates tension between what's feasible and what's right for our students. The Model Code of Ethics calls on educators to ensure students' well-being. Worley's article, Learning Disrupted, Learning Derailed, What Doesn't Kill You Doesn't Make You Stronger, challenges the myth that adversity builds resilience, showing that trauma disrupts learning and creates an ethical duty for teachers to provide students with support. An equitable outcome would ensure that all students impacted by trauma have access to the support they need to thrive. Trauma-informed practices such as routines, relationship building, as highlighted by Kavanaugh, address individual needs while fostering systemic change. This creates safe, supportive environments for all of our students. CARE is a moral foundation that is central to equity in trauma-informed support, as there's a moral need for teachers to reduce harm for vulnerable students. However, CARE can conflict with other priorities, like academics. Critics warn against overemphasizing individual care, fearing resource imbalances or stigma. Balancing care and fairness is essential for equity. Fairness is also central to this dilemma, ensuring all students have equitable access to resources. Some view fairness as proportionality or allocating resources to those most effective, which drives advocacy for trauma-informed care. Others see fairness as treating all students equally, which resists special accommodations for fear of creating unfair advantages. My perspective on this dilemma has been shaped by seeing the profound effects of trauma on my own students. Worley challenges the idea that students bounce back from adversity, which aligns with my own experiences having dealt with trauma. I know healing takes time and requires consistent support. This deepens my commitment to advocating for trauma-informed practices. Different perspectives on trauma-informed care stem from beliefs about education's role. Advocates like Worley see addressing trauma as a teacher or school's duty, while others prioritize academics or argue mental health isn't school's responsibility. These views reflect varying values on fairness and resource allocation in schools. Administrators recognize the need for trauma-informed care, but they face funding and resource allocation challenges. Teachers are also motivated to support these students, but they lack training, professional development, and resources, which leaves both groups unable to fully and effectively meet students' needs. Another stakeholder is the students, of course. Students with trauma often feel unsupported in environments lacking trauma-informed care. They struggle with concentration and emotional regulation and may view academic or disciplinary demands as overwhelming, which deepens their sense of isolation. Meanwhile, their peers may see the extra support as unfair, which creates tensions. People might also disagree on how to allocate limited resources. Resource debates hinge on equity or giving more to those who need it versus equality or equal distribution. This reflects differing definitions of fairness in education. Some believe resources should go to trauma-affected students who need the most support, while others argue for equal distribution. Educators need knowledge and skills to make progress toward equitable outcomes. I highly recommend that teachers learn about adverse childhood experiences, research trauma's effects, pursue training, and be equipped to create safe, inclusive spaces. Kavanaugh warns untrained educators risk re-traumatizing students, making understanding trauma essential. As an educator, I aim to build trauma-sensitive classrooms with trust, routines, and social-emotional learning. These strategies can reduce anxiety, promote resilience, and support students in engaging with learning despite their trauma in the past. Outside the classroom, I can push for short-term goals like professional development and strengthening existing support teams in my school. Long-term, I can advocate for policies to fund trauma training and specialists. These actions reflect both and thinking by addressing immediate needs while also working toward systemic change. Class discussions on equity, teacher responsibilities, and social identity reinforce my belief in trauma-informed practices. The identity assignment showed how identities shape academics, while peers' insights highlighted how biases impact students, which deepened my understanding of trauma's role in support and change. To conclude, trauma-informed practices are crucial for equity. By creating safe, supportive environments, we help all students thrive and reduce disparities. Trauma-informed care isn't optional. It is a vital step toward ensuring every student has the opportunity to succeed.